and then I'll ask who wants to do intros.
What do we do for intros?
I still don't even know how.
Hang on,
to
let me
start
look up the
these.
last video.
The last video started off with Ross making a super good dad joke.
Howdy, folks.
When's the last time you said your
That was it. Let's roll into this thing.
All right,
Let's
that's
roll.
it. Yeah. So I guess by this time most people should hopefully know who we are, but we have one new person in the group who we can welcome to the Cyber Idiots. Bobby, you go by BobbyRSec still?
BobbyRSec.
BobbyRSec. Most famously known for his GIF Shell attack, which I was hoping we could kind of dive into and kind of pick your brain on what led into going, okay, why GIFs? Actually, yeah, let's start off with that. Why GIFs?
I think we should address the elephant in the room first, though. Is it GIF or GIF?
Oh, come on.
This was the best part of the research, was seeing the Twitter debate rage back and forth.
There's one right answer.
Which
GIF,
is?
right?
It's very clearly GIF.
Yeah, GIF.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. We're all on the same page.
I feel like non-tech
no-
folks say GIF.
There's
What's-
no peanut butter fans here, right? We're all GIFs, not GIFs.
Oh, fair enough.
Argue in the
Okay.
comments. Let's
Okay.
go.
Yeah. All three people
Get
who
in the
listen to
comments.
us, get in the comments. But yeah, no, seriously, why GIFs? What made you think of GIFs?
Yeah, so I think the idea started. I was doing a web assessment at the time, and I was messaging back and forth with a colleague of mine on another messaging platform. And I think at the time I was testing some sort of like file upload functionality, and I had this I was testing different file extensions, and GIF was one of them. And I sent kind of a payload I was testing out to a colleague of mine with my burp collab URL. And I noticed that I got a lookup, not from any sort of, Boston IP, but from some weird Microsoft server in Brazil. I was like, huh, that's interesting. So like, what's happening there? And then that kind of combined with a bunch of other things over the years, it all came together, I guess.
Do you use it in the real world now? Do you go out and just use your GIF shell as your main source of C2?
I haven't really. We've been very busy with a bunch of mobile assessments of late since the research came out. But I'm hoping I'll get the chance to actually use it. So
Yeah, it seems like that's something like that Alex and I have always gone back and forth about, like non-traditional C2s, right? Like you always have the HTTP, the DNS, the HTTPS, whatever it may be. But it's like then you see the people using Slack as their C2. Or my personal favorite, Steam, because then you can figure out who's playing video games at work. But yeah, GIF seems pretty pretty odd. How have
It's
you
kind of
like?
interesting to see it go back to like the old days of IRC for C2. I mean, it's still used now, obviously, but like that was the hotness 10, 15 years ago. And then we were like, no. We're going to build all our own custom stuff, and we're going to compile all this stuff, and we're going to write all our own shit in Rust. And now we're like, you know what sounds dope? Slack.
Yeah.
Let's just wrap back around, man.
Yeah,
It's cool from our perspective because I saw this on LinkedIn. I saw this on Twitter. I think I even saw it on Reddit get brought up, and I was like, oh man, this looks really interesting. And so I started reading about it, and then David and I were talking. He's like, oh yeah, Bobby did that. And I was like, well, who's Bobby? And now, of course, I know who Bobby is. But yeah, so I knew about you before we even met.
awesome.
It was, yeah, very, very impressive. I thought
Thank
it was such a cool idea.
Thank you.
I mean, you kind of blew up too. Like
Yeah,
people
real
are
talk.
freaking out about it. Did you
Yeah,
expect this was going to
the
happen? Were you like, oh, I'm ready for my internet fame?
I had the AirTags research that I did a year ago, and Krebs published that. That was picked up by a bunch of different tech and cybersecurity outlets, and I think that story had like 14,000 views, and I was like, I would have been blown away by like 100 views on my blog, much less like anything in the thousands. So I was like super psyched about that. And then the Teams research, I think those two blog posts combined hit like 35,000 views. And I was like, oh man, people are really checking this out way more than I thought, and it's being shared way more than I thought also. So
Well, definitely,
yeah, I've been super surprised.
it sparked like further research into Teams, into really showing like how much Microsoft just really doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because they had told you that they're not going to fix it in the near future, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what was interesting about it. You know, there had been a lot of research into Teams over the years, and a lot of other researchers bringing up like, hey, this functionality in Teams probably isn't the most secure. And they were kind of like, well, you know, this is by design. And it was always like these like kind of smaller nitpicky type things of, you know, just insecure by design, just you know, not great functionality, things that could be leveraged by threat actors. And it was always kind of seen as like, okay, but you'd have to chain this with like so many other things for it to, you know, actually create any, you know, large scale impact. So it was just, you know, little security quirks here and there. So I thought, you know, it'd be an interesting kind of demo to show like what happens if you take a bunch of smaller insecure issues and kind of chain them together into something more malicious. You know, might Microsoft pay attention? Ultimately, you know, I think you know, that's that's to be debated, but
Yeah, I feel like Microsoft was like, yeah, nah, and then somebody came up behind you and was like, oh, hey, did you guys know that Teams passes creds in plain text too? And Microsoft still replied with, yeah, nah. Like,
yeah,
when are they gonna learn?
Like,
yeah.
oh no, it's fine. We're just gonna let it lie. What's the worst that could happen?
Well, aren't they? I think they're looking at pushing. Yeah, us. Um, aren't they looking at pushing out Teams to being a lot like MSN from the good old days, right? I remember they were talking about this for Windows 11, where it's like every or on whatever anniversary update that every user would have access to Teams, and by default you could communicate with external organizations. So right now, by default, it turns it off, but they're gonna switch that to being the new way. I don't know if that's changed, but to me that seems kind of wild. Like,
I haven't heard anything about that.
Interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them making forced decisions.
I mean, that's their whole business model, right? Like that's how they compete in the SaaS world. It's not necessarily the angles like, oh, we're going to make a better product. It's we're going to bundle this with, you know, O365 and corporations are already using it, and you know we can be there, you know, on the screen before Slack or another competitor is. And I think that's kind of their, you know, market advantage, right? You know, that's why suddenly so many corporations started using it during the pandemic, because it was already there. It was already there. You know, you don't have to sign up for any sort of enterprise license. You can just, you know, download the exe and you're ready to rock and roll.
yeah, I almost feel like, and you know, feel free to weigh in here, Ross, because I feel like you're a little bit more on the advisory side, where you're better off in this. But I feel like Microsoft kind of has a responsibility, right, to take care of its security at a base level and design things with security in mind, considering it's in the majority of businesses and homes in the world. Because I mean, we have plenty of Linux users, but let's be real, most Linux users don't know how to configure their machines to be secure anyways, and you're just gonna like, fuck it, okay. But like Windows sells its product and puts it in front of everyone. Like, do you guys think that they should have like this responsibility to ensure that it's secure before we go forward? Or like, I don't know, maybe it's me looking at like, you know, corporate responsibility in a different way that nobody wants to take it.
I guess that to me it comes down to what do we mean by responsibility? Are we talking moral responsibility? Are we talking like an ethical, or are we talking legal responsibility? Because I would say there's definitely no legal responsibility as much as there are. I mean, what percentage of the Fortune 500 are running off of O365, you know, or running off of Windows devices or Microsoft devices? I mean, you would think this is really at a national scale. It's a national security issue how Microsoft handles their security. Legally, however, I don't think there's really any additional beyond. You know, they're held to fairly strict requirements for, you know, ISO 27001. They're ISO certified. You know, they're going to go through their NIST assessments, and they're so massive. Even then, it's what part of Microsoft? You know, Microsoft's not one. It's one entity, but how many service lines do they have? So which service line has the ISO certification? Which one has had a NIST assessment recently? So I think trying to get our hands around an entity that big is a real challenge.
But do we think that there should be, like, you know, of
Oh, yeah.
course, like as emulated criminals, we all just enjoy whacking away and hacking things, but at the same time, I feel like our laws haven't really caught up with like the current cyber norms.
But I
So
guess, for it to be enforced at a federal level or legally, I mean, what is the criteria for an entity to get that large? Like, what percentage of the country has to run off of it, or how critical of infrastructure does it have to be um, for it to be considered? We're going to hold you to this even greater standard than we already are. I think that's some regulation issues and regulation discussions that
It
would.
would be so fast stepped around. They would create a different version of Windows that's
Yeah.
for government use, and they would say, okay, cool. It's not that percentage anymore. It gets stepped around so fast. There's no such thing as business ethics. Businesses do not have morals, and legally they will step around anything they can. Sorry to anybody fucking that doesn't like to hear that, but those are the facts. They will step around that in a heartbeat. You'll see a new Windows Gov 10 drop in 6 weeks, and they will no longer have to abide by those rules.
Of course, because when you think about the lift that it's going to take and the internal resources that you have to spend and the amount of headache that it's going to take, I mean, what's going to make the most sense? Do you actually do the lift or do you find a workaround?
yeah, but maybe even then it's a good thing, right? To do a Win 10 Gov, like, especially considering. Oh, did you turn on the sun there, Ross? Um, the Ruskies are doing it with their government Linux distribution.
Yeah, and
So
then there's like the North Korean Red Star, and like
it's pretty
it's
crazy.
all out there.
Yeah.
But does it make it better?
Well, I
But
think
in many ways, the onus is still on the end consumer to configure the product properly, right? Like the solution with this whole GIF shell thing was like, oh, just don't allow external communication from, external Teams users. Don't, turn off the caching feature of, Teams messages, enable this, O365, attachment scanner. And those are not, those are all optional. They're all either enabled or disabled by default, and the insecure by default way rather than the secure by default way. So
yeah, but I think that's the big problem, right? Is that we deploy things insecure by default. Though if you look at the flip end of it and you go and take like a DoD gold disk, and apply that to a server, then it just doesn't talk to the internet anymore.
Doesn't work anymore. It just turns the NIC off. I'm like, no, I'm not.
I don't
having
even
this.
think you can log into them. I made that mistake once when I first started off as like an IT admin. And they were like, "Oh, just run the gold disk." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I hit next, and it like patched the system to hell. And then we couldn't get to it, and that was a domain controller for
Changes
a
user
whole last space.
passwords,
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
yeah, you couldn't do anything
it's
with
bad.
it. But I mean, staying on the government kind of thought process. With CMMC, and you have to provide like the bill of software that you're using. Is your do you know if your vulnerability is going to make it in for Teams? Because I mean, probably all these larger groups. Shoot, even the Air Force, I remember was still using like Teams, Skype, whatever it may be, right? Like, I wonder if that would make it in. So
What
then,
were we using?
you
we
actually
didn't use
tear
shit.
apart.
Skype. No, we
You
didn't.
actually, if you tear apart Teams, it's actually largely built on like this hodgepodge of like Skype infrastructure, which was also pretty interesting.
It's not. I mean, it's interesting. I agree. It's not at
Yeah.
all surprising that they reused all that meat and just built a Franken system.
Right.
It's meat, dude. Why would we throw it away? We can keep parts of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, look at SMB, right? From V1 to what are we at now, V3, it's largely still the exact same program. Like, sure, you've added in a few security measures and a few logins, but you're still able to do a ton of wacko stuff with it. I mean, every eternal is SMB exploiting of V2 and V3. I don't know. Maybe we just need to stop using Microsoft. Maybe that's the key here.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
First people would ever say
Microsoft.
No, they didn't.
No.
No, they didn't. We've been hearing that for decades.
First time it's ever been said. It's a
I'm gonna
novel
keep
idea.
using
No one's
it.
thought of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep using it. I mean, where else do you get to play games, right? Like, you gonna play games on your Apple device?
Hey,
Do you think?
Speaking of Apple, I've got my
2 or 3 of them.
one of
I mean,
my
I can play
10 iPads.
RimWorld over here. That's about it.
Yeah, right. What's up, Bobby?
Oh, I was just thinking, like, as I've kind of looked back on like the reporting process and everything else, and like the number of times you see Microsoft in the news for like, on-prem Exchange RC, like there are so many endpoints they're responsible for, so many products. Like in a way, it's difficult to, care about making a secure by design teams or, fixing some, insecure behavior potentially that affects their customers when they themselves are having right and left to patch, super, high severity vulnerabilities on, potentially a daily basis, right? So like I do sympathize with them, right? Like I don't think it's out of I don't think they're doing it maliciously or because they don't, care about security. I'm sure the folks at MSRC are just, busy all the time.
I don't know, because
Yeah, I think they've made themselves such a big target that they can't handle it anymore. And so what they've done is they've shifted that onus of responsibility to the end user to install this correctly. And the end user is still assuming Microsoft wouldn't give us anything that sucks. But they know that the amount of money I would pay for access to their internal bug database is mind-boggling. They know it has problems long before anybody else does. They might not know the extent of, I can send you a GIF and whack, we have a shell.
Right.
But they know it's got issues long before anybody else does. And they just have to prioritize what they can and can't fix within a medium amount of time and what's going to get caught fastest.
Sure.
And what's the biggest problem. But the responsibility factor is disconnected right now, I feel. So we've got big corporate entities that are using the product going, Microsoft wouldn't send us anything stupid. And Microsoft going, yeah, the users will figure it out. And neither one are right.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's going to stop us as researchers or criminals from breaking things, right? Like, that much is always going to be true. As long as there are human beings, there's going to be crime. There's always going to be somebody out there tinkering, trying to figure out, how do I break this in a funny way? Because, I mean, that's ultimately why I write malware, right? Because I want to see if I can defeat CrowdStrike, and when I do, it's like, granted, like a week later, I'm screwed and back to stage one, but, like, ultimately, we're always going to find things. I think what kind of makes me a little bit more frustrated in this sense is, when we look at criminal enterprises that make fairly large amounts of money, granted we're not looking at the trillions of dollars that Microsoft makes, right? They make a lot of fuck you money for sure. But with some of these like malware as a service companies, they have better DevSecOps than like most Fortune 100 companies. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, let me just make sure that you can't really break into this code. And, we found this injection piece here. Let's go ahead and let's fix that. Or, we can detect our activity. Like, how come we're letting criminals do our job better than us? I think that's what kind of frustrates me, right? There wasn't like, with your thing with Microsoft, it's not the first time we've seen it, where they
Sure.
come out and they go, it's really not a priority for us. Like, you got to be internal. Like, okay, fam, like, they're just buying access now. There's not a problem with getting internal. You literally had a Microsoft Exchange vulnerability come out today. Was it today or yesterday? Either way, like a new Exchange vulnerability. Like, granted,
On Twitter yesterday, on Bleeping Computer today.
yeah. They're only a day behind. But, like, to just constantly say, like, oh, because it's internal, it's not a priority. I think that we need to find a way to get away from that mentality, because I've seen that a lot with companies, especially any sort of like CVE that comes out there, like, oh yeah, it's internal. Even Google does this. Google Chrome. oh, you have to be on the device in order to download the passwords from the password manager. Why the fuck are you giving the threat actor the option? You know,
Yeah.
like,
Why are we not assuming it internal? You know, I think when we're taking security measures and we're talking about patching, like we need to assume internal because internal is not that hard. An actual we do pen tests that are a very small and adversarial emulation. They're a very small representation of what an actual criminal is going to have that amount of time. So you know, somebody that is trying to do this is going to have months, and they're going to get in. It's not really an if, and I don't like the phrase, but of if when, but I truly mean it here. You know, it's not an if, it's a when, because somebody that's dedicated enough with enough time is going to get in, and we need to have the approach of assumed internal whenever we're talking about patching things like that.
yeah, and it's not like it takes a high skill to get in anymore, right? When we're talking 20, 30 years ago, like, we had some elite hackers out there doing some cool shit. And now we got like 17-year-olds in England just purchasing admins. And then on the other side of the house, guys just spamming someone from Uber, right? Like, it's not difficult attacks. And I think that's what kind of bothers me the most about this whole situation. Because it's like, if it was just your research that came out and that was it, I think I'd be like, okay, yeah, I get it, right? There's probably a little bit more of a deeper dive that we have to resolve within teams. But then when you had the follow-up research that was like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, you can also get plain text creds from teams. Oh, hey, by the way, you can also do, X, Y, Z. You can get remote code execution through, like, you spark such a revolution of people going, oh yeah, let's look at teams again, because that's crap. And because it's pushed out in O365 for free 99, you get a whole group of people who are using it because it's available and not realizing that the way that its default configuration is insecure. I think that's what bothers me the most about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is why I drink.
There's that sliding scale, right? Between usability and security. The more useful or the more usable something is, the less secure it's likely to be. They're deploying things on the very usable end because they want everything to be user-friendly. They don't want you to have to argue with teams to be able to send an embedded video to your buddy of, whatever. Right. They want it to be very user-friendly. So they have to make it not as secure in order to meet that requirement. On the other hand, you make it super secure and you've just unplugged the Ethernet and now you're good. It doesn't do anything. It's not usable anymore.
Well,
but their model is based around make it super friendly, make it super usable, make it something everybody wants to use and likes. And as an effect of that, it got holes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Even if you unplug it, it's still not like if you're going up against Israel, those guys are always finding new ways to read CPU. Dude, ones and zeros through a fucking Faraday cage. Just like
Faraday cage, it's bad shit.
God, like it. People find.
Did you see that recent research that came out of Israel? They were doing data exfiltration from a corporate enterprise, and they did this like demo. It was some PhD student, and it was like the flashing light of the Ethernet cable was being read. It was like Morse code was exfiltrating data through like the flashing light of the Ethernet cable.
What?
Yeah,
it was some like wild research of like advanced like physical based data exfiltration in some like air gapped environment. How you could like take information out through the Ethernet port light.
There was another one recently, and I think I'm gonna butcher this. If I remember correctly, though, it was reading data off of a hard disk drive based off of the frequency at which it was rotating. They were able to pick up information off of it from like a significant distance, like I think they said like 6 feet or something like that. And I thought it was the most. I'm gonna have to find the article. I might be butchering exactly how they did it, but it was very, very interesting.
I want to find what Kano operator is operating a camera to go pick up like flashing lights or spinning RAM. Like, yeah, it's just some guy like he's like, "Hey guys, I'm in," and he's got his little camera just pointing it out there. Like,
GoPro mounted on his forehead, looking through the window.
Hey, I'm from IT. Don't mind me. I'm just recording a training video. Anyways, let's just look back here for. Yeah, so I can see the problem. I'm
gonna have to sit here for about 7-8 hours.
Yo, how wild would that be? Like, that's what. It's stuff like that that just makes me like so excited about this job, because it's research like that where you just go, who thought of that? Right? Like, I would have never thought to look at GIFs until like reading your research, and I was like, I'm looking at GIFs every single time. And like the worst part is I'm posting GIFs from outside our organization. So you know how like Teams has like their approved images. I'm posting the GIFs that are non-approved images, right, from my phone, because you can just circumnavigate it using like the Android version. I figure I should have probably figured that part out, but it's stuff like that where you're like, this is some wild C2, and I don't know. I guess like my question to everyone, right? Like, what would be your wildest C2? If you could choose any program to use for communication, like what communication would you use? Because for me, I think there's just too many little wild like Windows API like HTTP calls that you can just use that are not necessarily HTTP, but they're not like outside of like the Windows IE framework. So you can still use the communication there. I think that would be kind of cool as like a circumnavigate.
The old cert util to download stuff.
Oh, that one's a fun one too. Yeah.
I saw people are using this just this week. People are using VirusTotal uploads as a C2.
That is the most meme shit I've heard. VirusTotal?
Yeah.
Oh
I just saw some Red Team developer post it this week. He's like, yeah, here's my new VirusTotal C2. And it's like using all their upload and download API endpoints.
Man.
Chat function.
I don't even know if you need a chat function. Like, think about like the good old days of like DDE Auto from the Office suite. Like, just using DDE Auto for your C2 would have been pretty cool. Though that was one of those where Microsoft kind of took a step back and was like, yeah, okay, we should patch this. Because they said they weren't going to. They're like, why? It's a feature. It's not a bug. And then everybody was like, bro, it's a bug. And they went, yeah, you're right. But
similar to the GIFs, did you see also this week some Middle East threat actor group was using steganography in the Windows logo itself to hide malware? Like, you know, the Windows
awesome.
background, like the generic window, they were sticking malware right in the PNG of the logo.
Sweet.
Man.
That's so cool.
It was Nick from Plextrack. I was doing a talk at with the Wild West Hacking Fest roundup with those guys, and Nick presented using Jira as a C2 platform, and I was like, "Yo,
That's pretty cool.
How like undercover?" You know, like the whole blue team's like, oh yeah, Jira, whatever. This is just Jira traffic. And he's over here like, yeah, who am I? And then it just kicks back some information into that ticket. Like all he's doing is just uploading like updates to a free account for Jira. Like, oh, I thought that was super fucking cool. I don't know, yeah, just like using like blue team tools against them, I think is kind of funny. It's almost meme-ish.
Something like ServiceNow or Workday.
Configuration managers.
Oh, you mean SolarWinds? The
SCCM.
leading remote management tool?
That's the shit.
Yeah, don't sue us, please. We don't have a legal entity.
Yeah. If we need to. Yeah, no, this is all off grid. If we need to, we'll just like blank the part where you said the name out loud.
Yeah. We should probably do that anyways, just for the memes.
We need a big red like bleep button, physical button on the desk that we can just.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Said something we shouldn't have. Back that up 5 seconds.
Just
When Zoda
rewind.
cut all of this.
Yeah.
We need a tape delay, like when you're watching the football game on TV. They got like 5 seconds to cut off before the streaker runs across the field.
Good old Janet Jackson.
Yep.
Had to implement. We need a Janet Jackson button. That's essentially what we need. A Janet Jackson button.
Put one up here.
I gotta see if I can get this made.
I have a question for you guys. So how do you even begin to tell blue teams, like how do they even begin to tackle like tracking down a virus total C2 or tracking down a GIF shell? Like I saw the Swedish firm did an analysis of GIF shell where they replicated the entire thing, and it was in like not one signature, not one bleep on the radar from like Sentinel and Defender, like just nothing. Like how do you even begin attacking that as a large organization?
I think if it's a novel enough concept, you're not gonna.
Well,
you're not, until something happens, and then it becomes reactionary, and then it becomes, okay, what the fuck was going on 3 days ago? And then we can start tracking all that stuff down. But something like that, I don't think it's going to be... If it's novel enough, it's very hard to see real time.
Yeah, we definitely need to get better at our packet inspection, right? Like, even packet inspecting firewalls that tear off SSL certs are still pretty shit, right? Like, Cobalt Strike still makes it by it, and then the client's like, oh my god, why? What happened? You're like, bro, it's called put something more than...
We just double wrapped it. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Let's put something more than like Windows Defender on your box. I also, this is something I talk about all the time, is antivirus systems are beholden to their customers, right? They are at a much worse off point than like any other security product, because ultimately the user experience is everything, and every AV out there could be at 100% detection rate, guaranteed, but the users would fucking hate their lives. They'd be like, I cannot
you'd
use
never be
this.
able to sign into your email.
Yeah, you'd be like, man, it takes 40 minutes to scan all the memory in this. So I think that we need to, start moving over definitely towards like the way of like Carbon Black and not Cobalt Strike. What are those? CrowdStrike. It starts with a C and an S. Same kind of thing. I think those are kind of the new way of doing it. It can't be just static based, like hoping that you find some static behavioral analysis piece. It's got to be all machine learning, and it has to be run through hundreds of thousands of times just to detect when something like GIF Shell is being manipulated. Because you're right, you're 100% right. Like, Dodd and I have seen malware in the wild that's been out there for 15, 20 years and nobody's seen it, because they do things so novel. Is that a good thing? It depends on which side you're on, right? But
everybody's a bad guy to somebody.
Yeah, I think so. But, it's just it's something that we need to change our industry around, at least the blue team side of the house. Because we're innovating a lot, and there are innovators in the blue side, right? Like Ross sees it all the time because he's the guy I go to whenever I have a question when it's anything other than attacking or OSINT. Well, I go to him for OSINT is what I mean. But go to RSA. What was the name of the game at RSA this year or last year? It was Defense in Depth. Yet everybody was offering the exact fucking same thing. We'll connect you into your network in a secure tunnel. It's not a VPN, bitch. It's a VPN, right? Like we're not.
Sounds like a VPN.
Yeah. It's an IPsec tunnel that gets you into the resources that you need and nothing else. Like, that's a VPN with network segmentation, bro. Like,
it's a zero trust one.
Separate. It's just separate VPN packages for people that get you into different VLANs.
Right. And it's like we're not innovating at the blue side, right? There are very few innovators out there, and the ones that are, like, they're expensive, so they're not widespread because it takes a lot of resource and power to make it as good as they are. So I think we're like your novel idea came in, and especially something like virus total, it's like unless you take the time to really innovate the way that threat actors are innovating, we're not going to catch up as blue teamers, in my opinion.
Back to the government point we were talking about before, do you think the government needs to intervene and put a national focus on talent attraction, blue team attraction, investing more of our nation's resources into training specifically for cyber defense?
Yeah, give us a tax break. All of us. just cybersecurity professionals. We get a tax break, all of us.
That kind of leads into a thought that I had as well, just to expand upon that a little bit, is like, what is the motivation as a blue teamer to innovate? From the OffSec side, from the red team side, when you innovate something that is a novel idea, everybody celebrates you. When you do your job well as a blue teamer, nobody cares. It's until you fail that anybody even notices you. So really, what is the motivation from the blue team side to innovate something?
Fuck. I was not expecting to get this philosophical about it.
That's a good question.
A lot of professions are similar though, right? Like physicians, like people in the healthcare industry, right? Like their bar of success, like if the patient is living after surgery, right? Like no one's cheering in the hallways, but if, a patient doesn't make it or the surgery doesn't go well, right? Like the bar is different than your average person.
And the difference I would argue there is that there's nobody like this getting credit for trying to kill the patient,
See pre-recording statement about Atlanta. Depends on where you're from.
Oh man, yeah, and I think on that same vector though, right? With medical, like, the innovators that are there, they're not actively working with a large amount of patients, right? They're working with very, very select few and all that jazz. They're still like celebrated and new techniques come out from that. But for the everyday physician, for sure, like, good job, dude. You plugged a hole. Well, at least that's like Dodds and I experience, right? Trauma when it comes down. Put your finger in the hole. Don't let it bleed.
The tampon in the hole.
Yeah, good job, dude. Yeah. Don't bleed.
Sweet, next.
Yeah, so like, yeah, that's such a hard question to answer. Like, how do we motivate blue teamers to do their job? Actually, let's be real here.
That's the thing. It's not blue team's job, and you're gonna have to let me finish this, right? Blue team's job, by definition, is to defend against anything that is known. Red team's job is to find new stuff. So the answer to this question is, we give them things. We help them. You're not going to find this if you're not looking for weird, obscure stuff. So here's this weird thing that happens. Because blue team doesn't have the time to go looking for weird, obscure stuff. They need to be digging through what they already have access to and looking for stuff they know about, because they don't know what to look for if they're looking for new, weird, novel stuff. We're paid to find that. That's my job. And I love it. But we share that in to blue team and go, hey, here's some weird stuff. Go look for this weird stuff too. Add it to your already gigantic stack, but here's some new weird stuff that you need to be aware of.
So then the good question
comes to...
It's going to be
a kind of a thankless job.
Yeah, but then the question comes to...
Everybody
how many
wants to be the SEAL, nobody wants to be the gate guard.
I'll be the gate guard. SEALs walk too much. They walk like 10. They walk 10K to a target. Like, I'm sorry, bro. I'm not about to walk 10K in the middle of the night with
ride bikes.
80. Yeah, yeah. I think the good question then from that is, how many blue teamers do you know would be innovative enough to go look for it? Right. I have one guy off the top of my head I could go ask. Right, Mr. Forensics, guy who works at CrowdStrike as their incident response like manager, super smart cookie, tells me like whenever my malware is just too stupid, he's like, no, why would you ever do that? That's fucking dumb. And I'm like, thanks, man. I'm gonna drink another beer and cry in a corner. But like,
because why would anybody look for it? It's stupid.
But like,
that's why I did it.
But for like Bobby, for you, like how many like blue teamers do you actually know that you can go and bounce an idea like GIF Shell off of for them to replicate and go, oh hey, we're not catching this.
Yeah, I try not to interact with the blue team. I just
I'm all about that money.
Dirty.
Yeah.
You just watch them through the window like the animals they are.
Tap on the cage.
It's like that.
I think that's
Try to throw them your scraps.
I think that's
And
another.
we've just alienated half of our potential audience.
I say that as a part-time blue teamer, something like that.
Something. Go ahead, Bobby. I know we interjected on you like 6 times there.
No. I was just thinking back.
Oh, we lost him.
Oh no.
We lost him. He's gone. He's gone.
Gotta charge them things.
Here's the problem with tech, is we just don't know how to use tech.
What is GRC? GRC's not really blue team. It's
What is GRC?
All right, hello.
Hello.
yeah.
Nice. You can leave that in. It's all good.
Oh, we will.
Anyway,
Also-
we interrupted you like 6 times. You interrupted you 1 time. Let's kill this thing.
Also, no one has roasted me yet for wearing the same thing as my LinkedIn headshot. I thought someone was gonna bring that up, but no, nothing yet.
Oh, we'll wait till the
bigger
2
roast
people who
is nobody
watch.
looked at your
Look at what we're working with here.
the bigger roast. I think is nobody looked at your LinkedIn headshot.
Oh man.
Savage.
I mean, to be fair, yeah. Like if you look at like what our backgrounds are, Ross lives in a cave. And Alex lives in a Taliban workshop.
A lighter cave.
I don't know
Taliban
what a
chic, that's my
background's
style.
supposed to look like, but it's something like this. So I mean, you
Yours
seem like
is
the most.
only one that could theoretically be like used on TV.
If I knew how to zoom in my camera,
People could
which is
see
an
that
option,
and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's reasonable." Everybody else is like, "What is this bullshit?"
like there is an
Why
option
is
to
the guitar
zoom.
part of Ross's shoulder?
Yeah, I need to do something about this. Usually, like when I'm at work, my camera's over here. It's a little bit easier. You see the window, you still see the guitar, but you guys got my worst angle.
When you turned around before, your
Run.
whole body just vanished into the ether,
Into the void.
to the void.
See if I can do it again.
Ross has got a super
wanna-
sweet house. Nobody talks about how sweet his house is. He's got an
He
elevator.
just he likes my elevator.
It's the fucking coolest thing ever. And then the basement, you know, like the traditional like man cave kind of basement, like it's a whole house. Whole ass house in his basement. He's got like a workshop. He's got another workshop. He's got a place where he makes his hot sauce. And then a fucking living
Hot
room.
sauce here.
Like
Just for FDA, so that you know, FDA, I don't make my hot sauce here.
he doesn't make it there. He just has a ton of like bottles that sit there.
You're gonna make me lose my license, man.
I definitely won't, because you tell me all the time that you have to go to a giant industrial kitchen to cook.
True.
Spends all weekend. That's why we can't do this on the weekend, because Ross is always like churning that sauce.
True.
Can we get a Cyber Idiot specific bottle?
I could do that. I'm game. Put a little logo on the
Tastes like
side.
shit.
Printer paper wrapped around with
It's
tape.
intentionally horrible.
It's got to be like a banana, though. It's got to be like
I was just gonna say,
plantains.
it's gotta be. Yeah,
Mm,
you can make it happen.
yeah, all
A
of
masking
5
tape
of
with
our
the name on it.
listeners,
Not even
yeah,
a real label.
all 5 of our listeners would go and buy the hot sauce.
Each time though that you roast the number of listeners, you have to keep adding it one. So after like a couple months, we'll be like all 100 listeners. Then it'll be 1,000.
Oh shit!
People just listen to this solely to get roasted.
Roasted Ghosted. Get it from Ross's Hot Sauce Company. It's actually really good.
And I'm getting all the shout outs today.
Actually,
You talk
no.
about my basement. You know what I used my basement for today is I got my 27 Kindles in the mail.
Oh, yeah. Bobby, you're helping out
Yeah.
with that, by the way. We're gonna use your knowledge and our shitty knowledge of how to make a good honey pot. Because we tried to do this last
Okay.
at DEF CON, where we were trying to make a honey pot. We couldn't get enough stuff. So what did Ross do? Ross bought a shit ton of iPads.
I got 10 iPads, 27 Kindles, and 44 cell phones.
Where did you source all this?
ShopGoodwill.com. Bid on them.
So they're not even all the same Kindles. They're just like random shitty ones you found on Goodwill.
Dude, they came in lots. So like I opened it today. There's 6 of the original Kindles, the white paper ones, and then the other what would that be? 20. I should count 21 are all Kindle Fires. One of them was like brand new in the box. But yeah, I got 21 Kindle Fires. I'm waiting on all my 44 cell phones to come in.
That's what we should have done.
The very real question, because I don't want to run into this. Part of this is we didn't have equipment this past year. Like we were trying to find phones last minute, borrow them. We will never have that issue again. But one of the logistical things I just didn't think through was how do I charge all of these? Like, I need to use. I mean, I got to do them in batches. I have to charge my stuff in batches.
No, we did
Hit
something.
me up after. I'll send you what we used to charge a million phones.
Yeah, we
Please.
did something wild at the lab, which was like the weirdest charging method. It
No, we
should not
didn't.
have worked.
No, we didn't.
No, it should not have worked.
No,
we
we
should have burned the fucking circuit. The amount of phones we had plugged
We had like
in.
a couple of USB hubs with a fistful of phones plugged in, but that was it. And then we threw them in that stupid tool cabinet and forgot we had them.
We
That's
had
what we did with them.
244 phones on one circuit, bro.
A lot.
I remember because
That
I had to count them. And then our boss got really mad that I counted them.
You wasted
Now
all this time.
I'm going back on Shop Goodwill and looking for a USB hub.
All you need is two jumper cables and a car battery, and you're ready to go. Just tap
Yo,
in.
that's what's up. Oh, that's what you should use the CPUs for. Like, put them right up on the front of your grill of your car.
48 CPUs that I bought.
Yeah, 48. You
That
may
was-
have an addiction,
That one
dude.
was, dude. That one was pure impulse. There's nothing more. There's no reason. There's no logic. That was pure impulse. I saw 48 CPUs and thought, I don't want anybody else to have that.
Jesus, Rob.
Well, I think, yeah, we're definitely coming up on time. So before we get too off track and we start talking about what else we're going to impulse by the end of this evening, I think we go around the horn and say who our favorite APT actor is. Personally, I'm all about that Fancy Bear because I think they're dumb and they got a cool name. But oh no, who is the? I just learned about like the Ukrainian IT army. Actually, those dudes are meme-ish as shit.
They're goofy.
Yeah. Never would I have thought that I would have seen a cyber war where guys are posting memes as part of the war. Like, ooh, next level. Anyways, Bobby, who's your favorite threat actor?
I like that 17-year-old that did the Uber hack. Building quite the name for himself.
Yeah, the one who replaced all their
Fancy.
internal stuff with porn. Pretty solid.
The thing I still have issue with these threat actor names because I used to work in cyber threat intelligence for a bit, and it was always like Fancy Bear, aka APT28, aka, and then it was just this long string of AKs. It's like there's no one agreed upon name for a lot of these groups. So I would
I
also
think
go.
it's a different problem though. Like we've got this weird thing that's happening. Give it an APT and send it later, and then we've got this other weird thing that's happening. Give it a number, send it later, and then once all of that gets correlated, they're like, oh shit, this is APT 17, 25, 36, and 91. Fuck. And then that's how you end up grouping them with 200 names because you finally
Right.
figure out they're all the same bunch.
Right.
True. Alex, who's your favorite?
You snagged it from me, man. I was gonna go with the Ukrainian cyber guys. Those dudes are funny. They just did something like 2 days ago that was hysterical. I can't remember what it was.
I mean, it's working, right? People are fleeing the country, not wanting to be conscripted into Russia. So they're pushing the right propaganda out there.
Yeah, they sent out automated phone calls to like hundreds of thousands of cell phones in Russia. That was like, don't do it. don't fucking do it.
What a bunch of classy gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I should say. We shouldn't assume. All right, Ross, you're the last one. Who's your favorite APT?
I think I have to go with the hacker known as 4chan.
God damn it, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, just always coming up with something novel, and I mean, really America's greatest threat. So, yeah, big fan over here.
Fair enough. Well, I'm all disappointed that you didn't say Big Daddy, but it is what it is. Thanks to all 6 of our listeners. We've gained one since the last time I've said it. So, yeah, that's the show. I guess this is how we end it, staring awkwardly into the camera.
Well, that's all, folks.
Yeah.
Gonna be how it ends.